Okay, so I'm super excited for this panel because everyone that we have today, these are all founders in our portfolio who are working on real world adoption in emerging markets. And so you're going to hear from them where they're seeing actual adoption with Bitcoin as an exchange, as a payment service. So 60 seconds or less, please, Nicholas, let's start with you. Tell us, what are you working on and where are you seeing adoption in your country?
All right, I'm Nicolas Burte. I live in El Salvador currently. I'm working on core banking software. The idea is to bring regulated company to use open source software. Today, if you think about the core banking software, it's a very, very long sales cycle. And when a bank chooses a software, they use it for like 20 years. And this is all closed source software. It's a huge industry. If you look at FIS, Fiserv, those companies are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And this is all built on closed source software, which is, for me, is crazy today that we still rely on closed software for banks. And so the idea of what we're doing is developing an open source alternative for banks. One of the benefits of being El Salvador is that El Salvador have Bitcoin as legal tender. And so now there is large financial institutions that see a reason to be in El Salvador so that they can have a bank that natively have two currencies, the US dollar and Bitcoin. And so we have some projects there. We also do other things. We have a conference called Adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador. We also have another wallet called Blink, formerly known as Bitcoin Beach Wallet, which we sold a few weeks ago.
Hello, my name is Paul Ferguson, co-founder of a company called Azteco. We are a Bitcoin voucher business. We're trying to make Bitcoin very accessible and easy to use and understand. I was talking with someone else. We want to make Bitcoin so easy that your grandma could use it. Basically, you can like walk into a retail store, pay cash, and get a paper voucher with a 16-digit code that you can then redeem on our website for Bitcoin. Or you can scan the QR code if it's a Lightning voucher, and it's an LNURL protocol for those of you who know what that is. And then it just essentially redeems the voucher directly to your wallet. And so that's the idea, is to make it very, very easy to use. We're a global company. We're available in over 190 countries through our online retailers. And we're seeing the most adoption in Latin America and Brazil right now.
Badass.
My name is Ethan Rose. I'm the CEO and founder of Pouch.ph, which is the Bitcoin company for the Philippines, the first and only Bitcoin-focused company in the Philippines. Our product is like Cash App or Strike for the Philippines. We focused on payments for quite a while because it was kind of my personal pain point and use case, but it turns out that the market really just wants to buy Bitcoin mostly. So we pivoted to that being like kind of the exchange and focus on selling Bitcoin. And we're recently profitable as well.
My name is Luis. I'm the founder and CEO of Bipa. Bipa is a banking app from Brazil. That is connected to Bitcoin. It's more like a bank account that serves as a hub to provide financial services to Bitcoin. And the idea is to take Bitcoin to the next level in the consumer side, where consumers can then use their Bitcoin for something else rather than selling, and then actually invest in the Bitcoin, keeping it, and eventually using it for other stuff that helps them in their financial lives. Currently, we have a bank account that allows users to buy and sell. It's connected directly to Pix. Users can transfer money in and out of their account 24/7. We are working in the process of nearly launching a credit card that uses Bitcoin as collateral. And we're really excited about that because really it unlocks a new kind of use case for Bitcoin in the consumer side, where users will be able to something else other than just investing and keeping in their cold storage. So we've got around 45,000 users in the wait list for the card. So really our challenge would be how can we support all those users and still scale to the size that Brazil is. Currently, we're seeing users really excited about the possibility of using their Bitcoin for something else other than just investing and having to sell and then pay taxes on it. And we see lots of users in Brazil really, really excited about Bitcoin and what it can bring for them and their family in the future, especially as we are very close to Argentina and we are seeing it firsthand what's happening there, what's been happening over the past years. So really, it's kind of unlocking a lot of people's mind in the sense that they want to, learn more about this magic internet money that, can help their lives eventually in the future. So it's helping us a lot because we are kind of like the only Bitcoin only exchange in Brazil, which helps this pitch of being a financial services focused company, not a speculative company that allows users to just speculate their money in other assets. So yeah, thank you very much for being here, and I'll be there to chat with whoever wants to chat with me. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Khatatso Ngako, and I'm building out Machankura, which is a service that allows people without an internet-connected device, basically people with phones like these, to send and receive Bitcoin. It's similar to an M-Pesa if you know about mobile money around Kenya and East Africa, West Africa, but we do it purely with Bitcoin. And yeah, we incorporate companies like Azteco, which is effectively the only way for a person with a device like this to acquire Bitcoin. With a 16-digit code, they just go to the corner store, buy a voucher, dial the 16-digit codes over here, and then they have their Bitcoin. And we incorporate businesses like Bitrefill, which technically through our integration is the only way for a person to then get a gift card that they could then spend at their favorite retail store or grocery store. And yeah, what else do we do? Effectively, we also look at underserved use cases, because ultimately a person with a phone like this does not have the type of money that a normal Bitcoin user has. So we implement features targeting them, like Stockfells, which is like a group savings account where a lot of low income earners come together and hold Bitcoin as a group, and then at a later time distribute the Bitcoin. And yeah, we explore features like that, on also how to onboard this user segment, because they also may not be able to sign up for an exchange. And yeah, we're building out features like that. And so far, we've managed to acquire around 20,000 users across South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Malawi, Namibia, and a few other countries as well. Yeah.
User numbers. If you can comment either on user numbers or some of the usage metrics you are seeing, and what are the main user profiles? Why are people using your service today? Are there any use cases that have surprised you, or has it been pretty straightforward?
I can talk for El Salvador a little bit. So Blink Wallet is onboarded in the 100,000 users.
100,000, he said.
In the 100,000, yeah. It started in El Salvador and it has expanded outside El Salvador, but it's actually not easy to have a wallet which is like in many different countries because of jurisdiction issue if you're custodial wallet. The adoption in El Salvador is like, it's not necessarily up to the white line. For people who may not be familiar, so El Salvador have adopted Bitcoin as legal tender about 3 years ago. It was at the peak of the last cycle, and so most Salvadorians have started using Bitcoin when Bitcoin was at 70K, and basically a year later they lose half of their money. They start using Bitcoin, and so for them it was a fairly hard, I guess, lessons. But now that we're going back up, I think this will change a little bit. But living there, I mean, I'm spending Bitcoin. I'm not using my credit card a lot in El Salvador. I go to Starbucks or to Walmart, McDonald's are all accepting Bitcoin. So if you know which merchant accept Bitcoin, you can just spend Bitcoin all your day and not use credit card. But you have to be mindful about where you go. On average, there has not been a huge increase in adoption over the last 2 years. It's been pretty flat, but as Max says, this is pretty much a derivative of the Bitcoin price. As the Bitcoin price will increase, I think it will dramatically change in the next year.
Yeah, I would say from our perspective, we surveyed our customers and we discovered that most people who buy our vouchers are getting Bitcoin for themselves, not to like gift to other people. Most people buy Bitcoin for themselves to, we say, to send, spend, or save. Our vouchers are available up to a limit of $1,000, so it's kind of low value compared to what maybe most people are, in this room are accustomed to buying. I think like a really good use case would be that I heard today was the fountain use case. You said people are they need to acquire sats, maybe a small amount to experiment with or to do something. This would be like a really good use case and example. I think would be interesting to talk to you about that later. But yeah, we're seeing about 100% growth year on year, and those are the primary reasons I would say people are using Bitcoin at the moment.
So for us, we've focused on the payments use case for the past couple of years, like I mentioned. And there's so many different personas actually. So we've got like freelancers in the Philippines getting paid from internationally. We've got more recently people who are just buying Bitcoin, stacking sats. That's kind of our more profitable center now that we're focusing on. We had Bitcoin Island last year that we focused a lot on the community in the Philippines. Not a circular economy, but a tourism economy. And we were trying to prove out the use case of the Lightning Network for international payments where somebody could bring like Cash App or whatever foreign wallet they want and make a QR payment locally. But there's not much money in that. Not nearly enough spenders actually is the main problem. Merchants were really easy to onboard. So we have merchants there who kind of became Bitcoiners and also stacked sats, but not nearly enough spenders to keep investing in that part. One really interesting thing more recently that came on is we have a couple of high-ranking government officials who bought Bitcoin from us because they don't want to use the shitcoin casinos locally. They want a more principled Bitcoin-only service. So that was a pretty cool thing that happened recently.
Yeah, we have around 180,000 accounts approved at the moment. Around 70,000 of them are active. And when we say active, is that they transacted over the last 3 months or have balance with us. And really, we've seen an explosion of accounts over the last year as Bitcoin really kind of got solidified with the ETF here in the United States. And then everywhere else in the world, people were getting excited and trying to understand more about it. And we were really well positioned to be that place where people will buy their first Bitcoin. And we're seeing that with our user base. We've got like these two kinds of different users, where it's like the users who used to buy Bitcoin at Coinbase, Binance, or some other crypto exchanges out there, but they're like, I don't want to buy all these crypto tokens that are all over the place. I want to find a place that is simple and easy to use and that I can recommend to other users as well, to other friends that I know, and they won't go there and end up buying Bitcoin Cash thinking it's actually Bitcoin. So we're seeing like these users that really are kind of like old school or OG from the industry back in Brazil that just really love Bitcoin and really like it and really have found out that most of other stuff is really just not interesting at all, and that just Bitcoin is the actual thing that they should be dedicating their time and inviting people to invest. And then there's the other kind of users that have never really found out about Bitcoin in their entire life, never bought Bitcoin, and then they found out about BIPA because somebody introduced them to it, and they finally were able to buy it because BIPA has only Bitcoin and USDT. So it's really simple for users to navigate the experience and actually make their first purchase. I've seen and I've heard countless times users telling us that BIPA was the first place that they could actually go through and buy the actual thing. Every single place they would go sign up and start buying, start selecting. They'll be like, there's so much options here. I need some help. And then they'll forget to go back there and actually complete the purchase and do the thing. So BIPA, because it's just so simple, it's within the app. You can open an account within 5 minutes and then buy one Brazilian real. You don't have to like put a lot of money into it. And so users are really enjoy that thing. And one of the things that users really tell us, like we run a survey asking them what's the most benefit that they see on us and what improvements we can bring to the app. And they've always told us like the most benefits, practicality and simplicity. And it took us a little while to actually accept that because it's not something you can act on that much. Like you're like, oh, it's practical, more simple. Yeah, it's cool. But like, you can't really do much with it. And then eventually you're like, oh, well, you know what? It's actually really important, really special to be that company and that product that in the human in mind that at least in Brazil, it's more practical and simple because, as humans, we're always looking for the most practical and simple things in our life. We don't want to be dealing with much complexity. So if we are able to do that and we are able to continue being that over the years for our users, I think it's very valuable, and it would certainly put us in a very good position to eventually, provide more of these financial services to them.
Cool. So, sorry. On our side, what we've seen is that, Bitcoin may be volatile, but it's not as volatile as a lot of African currencies. And sadly, a lot of African currencies are volatile downwards, and Bitcoin is volatile upwards. And as a consequence, even when it's sideways, people are actually, number goes up in a lot of African countries. But as a consequence, what we see is some of our users end up getting smartphones, right? So they start up with a feature phone, have some Bitcoin, they can afford a smartphone. But they still use the service because ultimately, still, 30% of the African population does not have an internet connection, or they live in a rural location, and our service is usually the best way for them to use Bitcoin because they get an SMS notification when they get Bitcoin, so they do know, okay, cool, I got Bitcoin. And some organizations like Bitcoin Ekasi, Orphans of Uganda, receive donations internationally, and it's much easier for them to receive donations via Bitcoin instead of a PayPal, even though their following is mainly familiar with PayPal, because also there's a lot of capital controls in Africa to move money in and move money out. So usually it's much easier for you to send a donation to someone in Africa via Bitcoin than any other platform, right? And so what's the third thing? Oh, yeah, I think that those are the major things.
I mean, yeah, so you said a lot of it, honestly, like on remittances, getting money in and out is a very big deal. And so at Lightspark I talked earlier about UMA, I talked about Extend. And so we work with Nubank in Brazil, we work with Bitso in Mexico, and we work with a lot of other exchanges across the world. And we noticed that when it comes to remittances, sending money, for example, from the US to another country, what matters the most is speed and costs. So a lot of those people need money very quickly. And so when their money is stuck for 3 days during a wire transfer, it doesn't work for them. And when the fees are very high, it doesn't work for them either. So Bitcoin and Lightning kind of solve those two problems because we're now able to move money really quickly from a country to another. It stays compliant, but it happens very quickly. So
Cool. One thing I think is very interesting is all of you guys mentioned focus on Bitcoin, focus on Lightning. A few of our other portfolio companies are really known for this. River, Alex is not here today, although his co-founder, Andrew, I think was in the audience. There he is back there. River has just been, I thought, just killing it in the last couple of months, shipping features where they can ship much faster because they're only building on Bitcoin. Like put your cash in an account, get Bitcoin, have proof of reserves because they only support Bitcoin. By not supporting the shitcoin networks, you can focus, you can ship more faster. Strike has done a lot with that recently as well. By being Bitcoin only, they can move faster. Are there any examples for you guys by focusing on Bitcoin and by focusing on Lightning of new features, new products, or things you could bring to market much faster than if you had, say, gotten caught up in some of the other stuff? And you guys can go whatever order you want this to.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example of just what I'm building right now, the credit card. We're already testing it in-house inside the company. We're just waiting for MasterCard to sign off on some stuff so we can launch it to the public. And that literally took me like 3 months to build like the entire thing with team. And I'm sure if we had like quite a bit of assets that we had to, I think, to integrate into it and think about what would be like the ratio of, and think about how we would get the funding them as well to use them as collateral would make life just a mess and very, very much harder to actually think about it and eventually ship it. So I think just having, at least in our case, Bitcoin and stable coins with USDT, it helps a lot. Just being focused and being able to ship. And also from our point of view, our perspective is that it has always been more of a positioning kind of thing where we want to be the main bank of our users. We want to be the bank account that they use every day, that they use every week. and for the main services. And I don't think there's a way we could do that if we just started adding all these different cryptocurrencies and started really making our platform more of a speculative platform rather than a financial services platform. So I think the next wave of Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin products really will be bringing Bitcoin to the real world and really not just speculating on Bitcoin like most of the crypto exchanges have made money over the past years doing.
So in the Philippines, other VASPs use some infrastructure provider like Fireblocks or something like that. So if they want any new feature in Bitcoin, like for example, if they want to support the Lightning Network, they kind of have to wait for some other infrastructure provider to do it for them. They don't invest like in Bitcoin specifically. Whereas us, we can support Lightning addresses like really quick, right? Because all we care about is Bitcoin. One other advantage is liquidity. We don't have to keep any liquidity in all sorts of other coins. It's just Bitcoin and Philippine pesos. So we can focus our liquidity on better, more currencies, I guess, that I would rather hold than anything else, and also can provide deeper liquidity because we're also our own liquidity provider. There's less liquidity available in the Philippines for Bitcoin, and so we can provide that ourselves and not have to spread it so thin.
Yeah, we've been Bitcoin only from the very beginning for philosophical, technical reasons. We use it as a kind of an excuse not to support anything else because we don't want to take on the extra like technical debt and technical load. It's worked out pretty well for us. And Satoshi said it first. He said the block with the longest history, or the blockchain with the longest history, is the one that all the developers are going to want to develop on because it has all the trust behind it. And so that's kind of been our guiding principle. That's the one that's going to last. And we feel good about that so far. I think it's going to continue.
I mean, I think over the last cycle, the casino crypto was something that a lot of companies made money on, but in my mind, this cycle is where it might be changing, and like the Bitcoin brand, Bitcoin only, I think will help company. Like on my end, I'm really focused on the banking side, and I think banking is about trust. And like if you get your user to, I mean, there is a use case for casino, right? I think, but like if you're in a more like serious industry, like you want to be Bitcoin only, will be obvious, which is why like Quiver in the US is like, I think is very successful, for instance. But yeah, for me, I'm super bullish on Bitcoin only, and also on my own like fiat, like also like help making this bridge, right? I'm super bullish on the next 4 years on like the Bitcoin focused company for sure.
Cool. So we are Bitcoin only in the most extreme sense because for what we are doing, it would make sense to have a fiat on-ramp feature as well, but we don't. So we just implement a Bitcoin wallet over USSD. And the main benefit is that we can ultimately get in a country way quicker than a mobile money platform. Right? So I think it takes us 2 weeks to get into a new country, but of course, paperwork takes longer than 2 weeks. So for the most part, from a technical standpoint, all the work that we do to get in a new country is 2 weeks, and that's why we're in so many different countries already. And the main benefit is that we could also build out a feature set that works in each country regardless of the fiat integrations. And why we do that, we understand that each country has an on-ramp and an off-ramp, and we are willing to collaborate with each on-ramp and on-ramp in the countries that we are in, so that they handle how users on-ramp, and then we handle the Bitcoin wallet side of the user's experience, and we just get into as many countries as possible.
Yeah, for us, there is a lot of fragmentation in terms of stablecoins, in terms of the different tokens. And honestly, Bitcoin is the only language that everyone speaks. So when we go and talk to partners and customers and prospects, everyone has like multiple coins and multiple currencies, but they all speak Bitcoin. So it's been really great. We've been able to move pretty fast because we all speak the same language.
I love that. Speaking the internet of money, the internet of value means you can grow faster, go into other countries faster, just strictly better. I think maybe we'll do 2 more questions and then move on to the panel. One, Paul, you had mentioned, I thought, a very interesting question, sort of technically. I think there's been some discussion around how is this technologically going to scale? Like, are we going to see a world where things scale non-custodially for users such that they don't have to worry about regulation? Is it going to be eCash mints? Is it going to be regulated fintechs? I'd be curious, maybe you can start, and then everyone, what are your views on, non-custodial versus custodial? How do you think about that for your business?
Yeah, sure. I think this is something I think about quite a bit. I kind of currently my thinking is that custodial, like people are kind of against these custodial solutions. Like the whole people who are hardcore Bitcoiners are like, I have to have full control of my coins and my keys, and if I don't, then I'm not doing this properly. But just the math, like if you do the basic math, there's not enough block space to open up a channel for every person on the planet. Like it won't scale that way. So you have to do either things like batching or some other clever tricks that maybe I'm not aware of right now. But my thinking is that custodial solutions are kind of part of the answer. I was talking with KG about this earlier. Machankura is a great example, right? I think he's doing both like a mixture of custodial and non-custodial, but that's kind of my thinking is that custodial is the solution, and it's not something to be scared of. It's something to be, it's like when Google and Apple get in the game, they're going to come out with their wallets. It's probably going to be a custodial solution that's going to be great. It's going to scale to billions of users right away, and it's going to help, usher in this great wave. We're at such a low level of adoption right now. I mean, like 100 million people have ever used Bitcoin. It's like 2-3% is like the estimates I'm seeing. To get to 10-20%, we're going to need some significant scaling efforts that are probably going to involve custodial solutions, is my thinking.
And to build on what Paul is saying, I think the key point is that in my mind, yes, Lightning will be mostly a network across like custodial solution, but you can opt out. So if you want, you have the ability to create your own node. If you have your own liquidity, you can do that. And that's a property that is not currently possible on the fiat system. On the fiat system, I cannot get a node and connect to the fiat, to the Fed. Like there is no, to be on the Fed, it's a permission network. I need to have a license. I need to, and we see like Custodia, for instance, like they try to get a master account at the Fed and they can't. And like Lightning, you can, right? Everyone can. But really, I think Lightning will be a network of like some regulated, maybe some unregulated, but really mostly custodial solution.
So we think that self-custody is extremely important for the neutrality of the network. If you only have custodians, then there is no competition, and it becomes a lot harder to keep the network neutral. So we really, really, really deeply think that self-custody is important. That's one of the reasons why we launched Spark, because it enables self-custody compatible with Lightning. That being said, there are lots of amazing use cases for custody, and we're not against that. Like lots of exchanges and wallets are proposing, added value services that are great, and it's completely fine. We feel strongly that both should exist on the network.
Yeah, so for me, when I was talking to Paul, one major point for me is that with the custodian, the onboarding experience is really the simplest it will ever get. Our aim is to keep it to like 20 seconds, right? Just ask for a person's number and that's about it, right? And then the service should do the rest on your behalf. But the other thing I feel is that technically speaking, the technology would allow you to deliver almost a similar experience self-custodially as well, as just that somebody has to figure it out and do it right. One example I gave Paul was that if a payroll system was paying out in Bitcoin and was also the LSP, that payroll is in a position to batch all the channels that they are opening up at the end of the month to pay out people's salaries. And that's one transaction that could accommodate, I don't know how many new channels. And then they could also do splicing and whatever else to maintain liquidity for those channels. And the people who receive those payments will never need to know much about liquidity, because chances are they're going to spend most of the income and then rebalance automatically. And yeah, so I feel, yes, custodially right now is really the best way to onboard a user and quickest way, but the technology almost allows us to do it self-custodially as well. It's just that you almost have to be the right type of person to actually pull that off.
Yeah, I think for us, it's very important as well. Self-custody, I think, since the beginning, we allowed users to withdraw their Bitcoin always. But I have a kind of like a very different take in terms of like custody and now custody and non-custodial solutions. I think like the right to have access to self-custody is what's important. I think this should never be taken away, and there should be obviously lots of people out there working on it, making the tech available so that people can use and they can protect their wealth somehow, because some people really, really need that, and they should have it. But like if we take a step back and look at the entire world and look at how just people are. People don't care about privacy. They don't care about security online. They don't care about much of that stuff. And I think it's in the hands of us as businesses that taking these customers to help them protect their wealth. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that if someone buys Bitcoin, keeps their Bitcoin with us, they will always have access to that Bitcoin. And I think it's sometimes not as good to be pushing users, new users, into self-custody too early, because it is a trade-off. You got to understand the trade-off. Like, it is actual money that's being sent there, and maybe like probably a million sats for quite a few people is a lot. And if you keep telling them to send those a million sats to paper wallet that they lose access after, they are going to lose access to their money, and that's not very good. So I think it is a process of teaching people, of having tools available custodially and then self-custodially as well, and teaching people the trade-offs, the real trade-offs, and not put yourself in the shoes of the people trying to say, oh yeah, I love self-custody, therefore you should love self-custody too, go self-custody and be an independent person that doesn't depend on anyone. But then like that person might not be the right person for that. So you need to communicate, what are the trade-offs with self-custody as well, and not just that is, this magical thing that allows you to always own your money and not, show the risk. So it's very important. I think it's very important to have the right to self-custody. But yeah, we should always like take care of when explaining to people and pushing them to do self-custody at the beginning of their life cycle as a Bitcoin user, because I think that might push some people away rather than bring them into the ecosystem.
And then in the Philippines at Pouch, we are custodial because we have the banking rails. So we follow all the compliance that we have to do to be the on and off ramp. Although if I can speculate, I believe that, more and more wealth is obviously moving towards non-custodial. And so that the custodians and the regulators will over time lose their power as the wealth transfers out of the powerful regime, right? And whether or not some countries may implement more regulations, some countries may deregulate. Even on those countries that tighten regulations, a lot of the wealth will be already out of the system, and they won't have the power. There'll be mass non-compliance. So this is how I think and hope that things will shape up, regardless of what regulators do. Non-custodial is the trend.
Cool. Okay, guys. So final word, and then we're going to get one more panel out here, and that'll be the end of a great day. Tell us, what are you excited about for next year? What do you think is the tipping point for Bitcoin and Lightning to go mainstream? Is it just a bull run in 2025? Is it getting companies like Nubank on the network? What do you think makes us reach the tipping point? Is it next year?
Yeah, I can start answering that, since you mentioned Nubank and they're a direct competitor of ours there. They're literally doing the same thing that we're doing now. It's funny. We started before, we're like, but we have Lightning. Now they have Lightning. But we have this. Now they have everything that we have. And I think Nubank getting on, and it's not that important, to be fair. Like, Bitcoin's quite hidden in their app. They don't say much about Bitcoin Lightning in Brazil. They're just integrating because probably like the CEO is really good. They really knows, and they want an extra way of making money. And it is an extra way of making money, since they are like integrating Ethereum, they're integrating all sorts of different tokens, because they just want to make the commission fees. But I think really the important thing for making Bitcoin really, it's make Bitcoin useful for everyone out there. It's just putting Bitcoin in the background, something that Lightspark is doing with Nubank there, bringing more transactional volume there, but also adding more financial services to people so that people see value in Bitcoin. It's not just this asset that you buy and you hope to get rich tomorrow or next month, or like that's what brings a lot of people into the industry, right? So I think we need to kind of like bridge the gap of it's not just a speculative asset. It's something that's very useful for people. And one thing that back in the day when I used to ask people like, well, why don't you buy Bitcoin? Most of them would just would just tell me like, what do I do with it? And I'd have nothing to say besides like it's an investment and you can hold it and it's going to protect your purchasing power, but that's going to take a little while. It's a little harder for people to see. It takes a bit of time, and when it gets there, it's probably a little later for them to kind of like have a higher purchasing power because they lost quite a bit of the upside. So, but yeah, I think that just making it useful so that normal people can see it as something that they can use on their life and they won't be like, it's not ideological, it's not this, it's not that, it's just like useful at all. It's like something that's available. It's a tool that's available that they can do. And I think if we continue to implement things and do things on this path, I think eventually, just like the internet happened, we just didn't see coming. It just happened. Lots of services started implementing things, and then devices started implementing support for it, and then all of a sudden we can talk to the internet can connect to the internet on sunglasses now. And I think like this is something that we should still continually build for Bitcoin, make it more and more useful beyond the fact that you can use it as a reserve asset. So, yeah.
Whoever wants it.
Yeah, I think price going up is not going to hurt for sure, but I think price go up does not equal adoption either. So it's not going to like make it go mainstream. They're two separate and unrelated. They're not like directly related. I think basically it's everyone in this room, like keep building and keep investing. That's like going to really help, but it's mostly going to take time for people to come around and get used to it.
I think in the US, a lot of banks want to actually offer Bitcoin services, but there is a lot of regulation that make it hard. Like SSC have a ruling called SAB 121, which is like banks, it's impossible for them to custody Bitcoin today. And so change of regulation will, I think, expose Bitcoin to like a lot of people in the US, and I'm very bullish on that.
In the Philippines, the former Solicitor General of the Philippines wrote a book on Bitcoin, equivalent of the Bitcoin standard for the Filipino audience, which is pretty cool. So I think maybe more countries, more in like high-ranking kind of people with some influence, especially some sway with other wealthy and powerful people, will probably become Bitcoiners, and adoption might start more at the top that way. Although I do hope it also starts at the bottom, and more the average folk can get Bitcoin at cheaper prices too. But yeah, one more thing I wanted to add, because I forgot to mention it earlier, is we do remittances in the Philippines as well. The Philippines is the 4th largest remittance market, India, China, Mexico, and then the Philippines. Very large market for remittances, and I think that's one use case, aside from just buying and holding Bitcoin, that is pretty powerful. We partner with Strike for the Send Globally API, so they can send direct, instant payments to Philippine bank accounts from the US, which is really cool. And then one more thing I wanted to add, because a lot of people probably wonder why I'm working in the Philippines and I'm not Filipino, because my wife is Filipina. I care deeply about the Philippines. We had some kind of tragedy with regards to a child passing away because we couldn't get money for him to see the doctor to the Philippines because of Western Union delays. That really set me on fire, and I quit my day job and started Pouch and kind of committed my life to making the payment system better. So that's, yeah, some other things I want to throw in there, but thank you.
Cool. So yeah, on our side, I think two things. One is we're gonna be building out a sub-vendor platform using the Azteco API, so that people in the countries we operate in could actually on-ramp how we on-ramp in South Africa, because Azteco has been available in South Africa for a while. And two, we actually are working on a self-custodial version of the service, thanks to SIM cards being programmable. Right, so we're working on a Java card applet, and if you want to play around with one of the older versions of it, you can play around with on this phone if you find me in the crowd. And yeah, so I think in next week or in 2 weeks, we're gonna release like a developer version of it for other developers to play around with the types of things you can do on a SIM card. It's not yet consumer ready, but the whole idea is that if you do it right, it should make the conversation with a telecom easier, right? If a telecom wants to deploy like a Bitcoin wallet to all their customers, they could just release it over the air, and overnight, all the customers will have a Java Card applet that can also act as a Bitcoin wallet. And yeah, so over the next year, we'll be trying to work on those discussions and see if it will actually be an easy deployment to pull off in Africa or any other country in the world. So if you know any eager telecoms, please have a conversation with me. Yeah, I'm willing to do the paperwork to be an MVNO or whatever else to actually try this out.
So I think what's gonna make Bitcoin amazing next year is gonna be the adoption of mainstream use cases, right? Like as soon as we're gonna get Bitcoin into the daily life of regular people, that's where we win. And I think it's both about getting the right companies onto the network, right? Like Nubank, but other exchanges that will bring a lot of people at once on the network. But it's also about getting the right use cases like remittances and payments and making sure that it gets part of people's life. And maybe they don't even have to see Bitcoin. Maybe Bitcoin just happens under the hood and that's okay.